Hey there, it's Blair here at Time Trades. I hope everyone's having a great weekend. This is your weekly video for Saturday, November 5th. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the NASDAQ futures, and we've got the Time Trades indicator on here, and I'm showing eclipse season and the cheat code. And I wanted to explain a little bit about why I think eclipses tend to be maybe a little overhyped in the financial astrology world. So when you go back and you take a look at the eclipse season in purple, you can see in general what's happened here, and also note the teal lines that come from the cheat code. Now, these teal lines are actually halfway between eclipses. What I'm going to present to you is my opinion that the teal lines are halfway between eclipse seasons is actually more important than eclipses in and of themselves. So if we go all the way back to, say, the COVID low here, we can see the COVID low occurred right in this teal line area. So this is one extremely major pivot that happened on March 23rd, bracketed by a couple of teal lines. And remember, these teal lines are halfway between the purple eclipse seasons, okay? So the interpretation I offer for teal lines is that they indicate major pivots more often than the eclipse seasons. Eclipse seasons often are just continuations of existing trends. Things maybe get a little bit more choppy and slightly more volatile, but I have not noticed a pattern of major pivots occurring during eclipse seasons, with maybe one exception. Okay, so moving ahead to September 2020, then we see another pair of teal lines here, and ask yourself, is this a major pivot or not? And I would argue it is a major pivot, because we're coming down into from this correction in September 2020, bottomed right around September 21st, September 24th area. And then from there, we base and keep going up again. And then we have another major pivot here, March 8th. And this is right in the square of 12. The square of 12 is these two EMAs. 144 is the slow one, and the 103 is the fast one. So this is a very nice confluence here with this teal line. Keep going up. Another major pivot here, August 31 of 2021. And then we get into this one exception, and this is an eclipse season in November, December of 2021. That aligns with actually the all-time high so far on the NASDAQ futures. So this is kind of the exception here, and you can see how these major pivots kind of bracket that. Very interesting that this all-time high happened right in an eclipse, because for most of the other eclipse seasons, we don't see major highs or lows occurring during those time periods. They often tend to be continuations of existing trends. So we revert back to the standard behavior of eclipse seasons in May, where we see this purple box extending, continuing the existing trend. And then another major pivot here in August, bracketed by the teal lines. And now here we are in the next eclipse season. And we are seeing, maybe it's a little too early to conclude what we're seeing here, but I guess my own personal bias would indicate that this is an extension of the existing downtrend, and not some major pivot that's developing. Okay, so where does this leave us in terms of the forecast? So the yellow arrow is our forecast. This is what we've been developing over the last few weeks on this video here. And you can see the performance this week was completely in line. So I guess I'd score myself with an A on this, because, directionally over the last week, we had one, small up day, followed by an unchanged day, followed by 3 trending down days. So definitely in line with the direction of that yellow arrow. And we've still got this pointing into our target zone, which kind of brackets the magic level at 9,350. So I don't see a reason to change this going forward, and you'll see why as we go through all of the time trades forecasts. So we're going to leave this yellow arrow intact for now. And let's go through our forecasts and see why we're going to leave that intact. Let's start with the Qs in time trades. So this is the time trades web application. And what we're seeing here is kind of a bit of a relief on the down pressure in this little hollow here. So in this swim lane, we see probabilities of a 2 standard deviation down move over the last 5 trading days. So as these down probabilities are decreasing, there's actually a chance of a little correction here, an upward move into late this week. And then the down pressure comes back, peaking November 18, and you can see that aligns with a probability of a pivot low, a 42% probability of a pivot low on November 18th. But that's not the end of the down moves. We've got more in the forecast, also for early December, and then other clusters later on. So that's the Qs. But remember, we don't like to build a forecast based on just one symbol. We like to look at others to try and see if there's confluence across all of the symbols that we track here. So this is the spiders. Spider seeing a peak in 2 standard deviation down moves November 14th. That is in alignment with a pivot low November 10th. And also we see that similar, gap or reduction in moves down early next week as well. So we may see a little bit of a relief bounce, especially after that relatively strong finish, I guess, on Friday. So that may continue on early in the week, but it looks like later in the week and into next week, especially around November 14th, we're looking at high probability down days. Let's see if the Dow agrees with that. In general, I guess directionally it does. We've got increasing probability of down days, peaking November 11th, and then another wave down on November 16th, heading into these pivot lows around the 17th and the 21st. So I'd say those 3 so far are all in alignment. Let's take a look at IWM. IWM, generally the same. We're looking at the same sort of date range here for an increase in moves down, starting November 15th, then going through November 22nd. But there is a little bullish bit of activity in the forecast here, peaking November 29th. So something to be aware of there on IWM. Okay, so let's also take a look at the major tech stocks here that are components of the Qs. So looking at Apple, that is showing a few potential green days this coming week, heading into November 11th with a pivot high. And then the red returns with a peak in 2 standard deviation down days, November 18th. So in general, it looks like we'll be seeing a few days up and then a return of the downtrend November 18th. I really think we are going to end up tagging this magic level here at around 123 and on Apple before we get a good bounce. So that could be a significant down move into that. Okay, Microsoft, lots of red in Microsoft, but again, interestingly, it also has a reduction of down days. Now, this is a little weird to see, a pivot low on November 15th, and this is not in alignment with moves down. So what we like to see, because these are 4 separate machine learning models, they're not kind of coordinated. What we like to see is synchronized moves between them so that, the moves down peak with, say, a pivot low. right? That indicates some level of alignment or synchronization between the 4 separate machine learning models. So when we don't see that, it gives us a little less confidence in this forecast. So maybe Microsoft is something that we should kind of set aside for now because of this lack of alignment or synchronization between the moves down and the pivot lows here. Although the pivot lows are still in that date range that we see for the rest of the Qs and Apple, it's, you know, right around that week of, you know, kind of the 14th to the 18th. Okay, so that's Microsoft. Let's look at Google. Google has another reduction of down days this coming week. So it has the lowest probability of down days, November 9th. This is, we also see some pivot lows here. So it's a little bit out of sync, kind of like Microsoft. Again, ideally, we want to see the peak in the moves down aligned with the peak in the pivot lows. We're not seeing that. But that being said, we're still seeing alignment where the probabilities of the moves down return November 14th to 18th. So this week may not be a red week, but next week is looking very high probability red week across the board. So let's take a look at NVIDIA here. Now, the NVIDIA forecast is a little... you know, there's not much happening on it, and that's okay. There's not always going to be something happening, but I do want to take the time to go back and review a forecast that we covered on this video from 3 weeks ago from November 15th. So if we go and take a look at Keynote here, so this is a screen capture from that October 15th video, and the commentary that was made on at that time, it was pretty bullish based on the cluster of green 2 standard deviation up move days. And at the time, the NVIDIA was trading at 112. So that was the close on Friday, the 14th. And then fast forward 3 weeks, and it's boosted up 26% in that time period to close at 141.56. So this cluster of 2 standard deviation up days definitely came to pass. So very successful forecast there in NVIDIA. I hope you're able to participate in some of that move. Honestly, it wasn't easy to trade. There was lots of, you know, different shakeout moves, especially around that white magic level area. But this is what I love about magic levels is once price tends to you know, establish itself above a magic level, especially a white magic level, then those moves tend to continue on for a few more days. So breaking through, holding, separating above a magic level on good volume is definitely signals that I look for in potential moves and whether you're going short or going long. Okay, so that's the update on NVIDIA. Let's go back and continue to look for confluence across, you know, the dollar and bonds. So when we look at the US dollar index, by the way, DXY is a new symbol in time trades, just added that with our change of data provider. We switched over to a new data provider that is much better than our old one and gives us access to important symbols like DXY. Okay, so what are we seeing here? Well, we're seeing the dollar strength being forecast to return, and right in that week that we see a lot more forecast down days. So this kind of this is a strong confluence with what we see in stocks, with the return of that inverse dollar trade, with stocks going down and the dollar going up. And we see that synchronization we like to see with a pivot high in here in alignment with moves up. So very bullish forecast for the dollar for the week of the 14th. And we can see a little bit of weakness in the dollar for this coming week. And that would, again, be supportive of a small increase in stocks or correction upward in stocks for the coming week. But ultimately, I think it's all going to get retraced, and stocks are going to strongly resume the downtrend starting the week of the 14th. Okay, let's look at bonds. We've got TLT here. So TLT is the 20-year Treasury bond ETF. And again, we see starting the week of the 14th, we see a return of weakness, and this mega downtrend in bonds is going to resume again, starting, it looks like in the latter half of this week, around November 9th. And then continuing and accelerating into November 14th, the Monday of the following week. And again, this aligns with a pivot low here for this 2-week period of the 14th through to the 25th, okay? So more bond weakness in the forecast, which lines up with the dollar strength, which lines up with the stock weakness. So all the different puzzle pieces are fitting together here. And this is what I love about time trades, is the ability to just look at all of these key symbols very quickly and determine if there's confluence across the board or if a few puzzle pieces are not fitting. Okay, so we can also take a look at UNG, natural gas. I've been tracking for a while, and the reason I like natural gas, I've mentioned it here before, is the way it tends to behave around the Gann wave blue and yellow here. So often it makes lows around blue and highs around yellow. We just crossed a Gann wave blue, okay, and with a few other sort of fundamental changes with, winter heating season approaching, as well as the Freeport LNG export plant restarting in November. We're starting to see that impact on price, as we saw a big green bar on Friday. And it looks like, from the time trade standpoint, the next major pivot high is November 26th. So this could continue for a few days or possibly even a couple of weeks. We see relatively low down pressure in the forecast. When I see probabilities this low, 30% or lower, well, I tend to put a little bit more confidence in the Gann waves themselves than actually these isolated, relatively low probabilities of a single day move. And what I'm looking for is just the general trend of declining down days in the forecast, and that's in line with the pivot high over here. So hopefully we start to see a little bit of an acceleration upwards in UNG. The other reason I like UNG is, just the fact that it's made this double bottom right on a white magic level. So these magic levels are pretty critical. We've got a strong double bottom here. And even though the forecast is a little bit ambiguous, the price action around this white magic level, combined with the Gann wave blue heading up into Gann wave yellow, is giving me a bullish interpretation here. Okay, so that's natural gas. Let's take a look at crypto quickly. So crypto's looking really interesting right now. We're starting to see a little bit of a return of some strength in the crypto complex. So if we take a look at Bitcoin, I want to share with you a little trick that I've kind of discovered here in time trades. So the way I've got this chart configured, it's a little different. If you go over here to Wheel of 12, if you turn on Venus and the South Node and set the wheel size to 1200, then what you will see is the white line declining is the South Node location converted to price using the Wheel of 24. And we also have the Venus location converted to price using the Wheel of 24. And notice what happens where the lines cross, okay? if we have blue crossing white here on November 3rd, just the day before a pump, okay? And let's go back another day, another cycle, October 15th. Well, it wasn't a huge pump, but it was a solid 2-day pump, right? You know, went from 18,990 up to, you know, 19,547. Let's try the next one. September 27th. This was a big red day. Closed pretty red, but you know, again, we had 2 green bars afterwards and didn't make a higher high though. Let's go back another cycle. Okay, so well, this is a great example. September 8th, September 9th, we have this giant green bar. September 8th was just the day before, okay? Let's try another cycle. Let's go back here. Okay, we've got Venus crossing the south node on August 21st. Not much of a pump afterwards, but hey, that's okay. It looks like it went into a bit of a consolidation after that. It definitely didn't go down. So let's try the next one. We go back over here, and it looks like the relationship is kind of starting to maybe fall apart a little bit here. But we did end up getting a bit of a pump, but it started about 3 days after the cross. So my point in sharing this is that there's a little bit of a pattern here that you can see with Venus in the south node. So the next time it crosses is going to be November 21st. So let's wait and see what happens then. That may be a good time to take advantage of maybe a short-term trade, take advantage of what could be a big green bar at that time. Okay, so that's Bitcoin. As far as the rest of the forecast goes on Bitcoin, we're still not seeing a heck of a lot in the forecast. Although when we take a look at the pivot low here, December 7th, we've got like a move down into a pivot low, followed by a big cluster of green. So looks like we've got you know, a really solid buying opportunity starting early December. So that's something to take a look at. The other thing I want to share on Bitcoin is if we flip over to TradingView here and take a look at Bitcoin. Now, it's at a real interesting juncture. It's starting to show bits of strength that we haven't seen in a long, long time here. So again, this is the square of 12. The thin line is the 103 EMA. The thick line is the 144. And you'll see Bitcoin is actually tagged the 103 EMA for the first time in months. The last time it touched it was all the way back in April. So it's put in the work. It's done the basing. We're starting to see higher highs right around Gann wave blue. So if you compare Gann wave to Gann wave, now this is like the first time in a long time we've seen you know, a Gann wave blue be higher than the prior one, right? Last time was probably over here, August 9th. Okay. So definitely signs of strength returning to Bitcoin. I don't think that means we, you know, see a pump in the near future, but it's definitely something to be aware of and keep your eye on. I think if Bitcoin's able to cross and hold above this magic level at 24,400, then you know, we may be starting a new bull run here in the crypto complex. One thing that that has always stuck out in my mind in using these Gann waves is when you look at them on crypto, you can see the Gann wave blues here back in the summer of 2021. And I remember this very vividly. It was just a grinding sideways consolidation until we tagged a Gann wave blue in July, on July 22nd. And then that was the trigger for this pump from 30 up to 52. And then, of course, it went on to 64 after that. But this was a really huge, I guess, trigger point for Bitcoin. So keep an eye on those Gann waves. And when we see that kind of pump coming right after a Gann wave blue, that may be the start of something big. Okay, so that's Bitcoin. Let's go and take a look at Ethereum and time trades. Okay, so Ethereum had a great week. We've got this big green bar on Friday, and now we're coming into what looks like a fairly high probability pivot high on November 7th. So that's on Monday. The next big part of the forecast is down here, some probabilities of a move up starting November 13th, and then another pivot high November 29th. So it looks like this move up is closer to the end than the beginning. And notice that we did cross and separate this magic level here at 1364. So often when magic levels are crossed, the price will come back to retest it. Okay, so this retest has not happened yet. I would not be surprised to see a retest happen, on the right hand side of this pivot high, as price comes back in and around November 12th or so before these green bars hit. Okay, so that's Ethereum. Let's take a look at Litecoin. Litecoin has some really interesting has a really interesting forecast. Now I'm using the Litecoin in Ethereum symbol here, so this is a bit of a ratio, and you can see here how it's tagged the magic level, moved up, came back for a retest. Wow, did that retest ever succeed? So we're definitely in the mode of looking to get into Litecoin on any sort of pullback. We may be seeing a pullback around November 12th. Okay, so keep an eye on that. And then we've got another couple of potential bull phases here, peaking November 19th and then December 5th. So Litecoin also looks very interesting. It's great to see these signs of strength returning to the crypto complex. And we're going to close the call by taking a look at some of the Indian and Australian stocks. So let's look at the Nifty. So the Nifty is showing a couple of waves down here, peaking November 16th, again, to bring things back to what we're seeing in North American stocks, November 16th, and then a second wave down in December. So it looks like we'll get one wave down, maybe a little bit of a correction here around late November, and then a second bigger wave down peaking in December. Okay, so let's take a look at the Bank Nifty. Bank Nifty, very similar. We've got one wave down November 16th, and then a second wave down peaking mid-December. And we'll close the call with the Australian index, the ASX 200. Lots of red here. So we're seeing, multiple waves down, peaking November 14th, November 22nd, November 29th. And, after that, it just continues to stay on the red side of the ledger. So not looking very, very positive at all for the ASX. Okay, so with that, we're going to close the call. Thank you for listening. Thank you for using Time Trades. Good luck trading this week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye now.